So that all comes off when they fly. The only thing they have on them when you fly is the bracelets. Because if you leave all that other stuff on, it looks like they have food, and an eagle sees that, and they're going to chase them until they exhaust them. You know, the eagle has ultimate staying power.
Is the pearl beak like that unique to her, or that species has that color of beak?
Generally, it's a gerfalcon thing that in their juvenile plumage, their soft parts, what we call their soft parts, their feet and their beak and cere are blue. And you can see that kind of bluish gray color.
Yeah.
So as they grow older, that'll go to yellow. They'll be bright yellow, and you can see that on Dante. You'll see in a minute that he's a mature bird and he's gone. Also, she's in her juvenile plumage. She's what we would consider a white ger. Gerfalcons come in all colors, from pure white to pure black. And because she's in her juvenile plumage, she's not pure white, but she is really pretty light. And when she molts in the first year, she'll turn almost pure white. It'll be kind of gray, silver gray on her back.
Are the females larger than the males?
They are, yeah. She's about as big as a falcon gets in this country. I've clocked him at 237 miles an hour from 3,000 feet.
That's awesome.
This happens pretty fast. You can't even see it when they're coming down that fast. All of a sudden, there's a dead duck there, and he's pitched up. The day came when I turned her loose, and she's got the wind under her wings and said, "This is fun." And she went kiting around the county for 24 hours.
She hustled you. It's like, I'll do it.
So yeah. This is.
That's what I was wondering. Is there a black market for falcons?
There was, you know, and at one time, it was mostly run by the U.S. government, try to entrap people.
Shocker. Well, welcome to the Hump Podcast, guys. Today we have an awesome guest. He's a biologist. He is the president of the Washington Falconry Association, Paul DeBruyn. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Brandon. Nice to be here.
I'm glad. I'm really happy that you made it out here. So, Paul, first thing that we're going to go over, who is Paul DeBruyn?
Well, a large part of my life is being a falconer. I've been a falconer since 1978. I don't know the math on that. That's a long time.
You're going over 40 years.
Yeah. So yeah, birds are a big part of my life. I always have had them around since then. I was a biologist who was studying birds of prey, and I got involved with some falconers who seemed to be the only people who knew anything about birds of prey. And so pretty soon I had birds and had them ever since.
Really? What age was that? So,
oh, that's probably my 30s.
In your 30s when you started birds? And you weren't a hunter? You were just like into the science more? Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I actually was probably a little bit anti-hunting when I got started, but now I'm kind of bloodthirsty. not that bad.
Well, and was falconry like what got you like really going into hunting? Or
yeah, absolutely. You know, I can say that. Well, I hunted as a kid, but you know, in the 60s, hunting wasn't a big popular thing. That's when I was growing up, and so.
No, it wasn't popular back then.
Well, you know, I mean, the cultural thing was kind of, you know, peace, love, and understanding.
Really?
You know?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Huh. That's cool. So then when you got into falcons, were you still a part of the Washington biology or the wildlife?
You know, I've been into wildlife biology pretty much since I graduated from college, which was in... I had a pretty extended college career that went, so yeah, but pretty much wildlife biology, fisheries biology.
What college you go to?
I went to Western for the first few years, and then I actually graduated from the Evergreen State College.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah, well,
dang, I like it.
I didn't spend much time on campus. I did. By that time, I was mostly doing independent studying birds of prey. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've always been into birds, man. That's cool.
My advisor at Evergreen was Dr. Steve Herman. He was a falconer from the 50s, and he was a big influence on me. He was a pretty awesome guy. He's gone now.
Oh, man. That's cool, man. So Evergreen's where you got going, huh? At Washington, did you grow up here in Washington then?
Kind of. I was born on Whidbey Island, and my dad was a telephone lineman, and then in the 60s, he got work in California building missile bases. And so we moved to California when I was probably 8, 9 years old, and then I came back as soon as I was an adult.
Right when you were ready?
Both my parents were born in Bellingham, and a lot of my brothers and sisters, and so it was kind of natural that I got back there.
Nice. Is that your staying till it's done there?
No, my life is pretty complicated. I couldn't move it.
Yeah, because you're living pretty close to the Canadian border right up there in Bellingham.
Yeah, in a little town called Everson, which is on the Nooksack River and farm country.
A lot of falconers around there?
Not too many. Yeah, me and a couple other guys. Yeah, it's pretty sparse. It takes a lot of room to do it right, and so there's not a ton of space to do it.
And now a little rundown. What exactly is falconry for those that don't know?
Well, it's basically keeping birds of prey to hunt with. That's kind of our definition, and there's a lot of offshoots: captive breeding, bird abatement. But the definition of falconry is pretty much hunting wild game with birds of prey and keeping them and managing them. So
what's like the history of it? Because I would guess that was something that I was kind of wondering. I know that dogs are credited with being one of the first animals that we developed relationships with. But I thought, man, falcons have been around for a really long time.
And falconry too, yeah, it's evolved separately in various places. It goes back thousands of years, in both in the Far East, in China and Japan, as well as in the Middle East. And there's some very early hieroglyphics in the pyramids and stuff that show people with birds. And so we don't have like a written history back then, but we know it goes pretty far back. And then it's popped up kind of, convergent evolution in various places and on the planet. It's kind of a natural thing.
Is there like one place where it's like falconers dream to go be there one day or see it?
Yeah, not exactly one place. The by far the biggest numerical preponderance of falconry is in the Middle East.
Really?
Yeah, and when back in Bedouin times, when they were out there riding their camels around the empty quarter and stuff, they were pretty much subsisting with their birds of prey that they were eating. There was a large pheasant-like bird called a hubara bustard, and that was the traditional prey of the Arab falconers. And then when they found oil and became quite wealthy, it really blossomed into where they were capturing in the area of about 3,000 birds a year for falconry.
Oh wow!
And these sheikhs would maintain huge aviaries with all these birds and all these falconers, But it goes back. Genghis Khan had 1,000 birds,
Really?
Yeah, he had gerfalcons and goshawks. And,
wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot of old paintings of him with big retinue of 100 guys with birds of prey on their fists, and he's riding on a cart in the back of an elephant. And so, yeah, and there's a lot of history. Our falconry pretty much is descendant from the 1500s in Europe and England. That's kind of the model that Western falconry evolved from. Our style of hunting and is pretty much based on English methods, but of course we've innovated a lot.
Is there big differences between different styles?
Yeah, there is actually. The Arabs, and they pretty much do what would be considered direct pursuit flights, where they see the prey, they take the bird out of the hood, and it goes after it, and it can go for miles. And in the ancient times, they used camels and horses to keep up with the action, and anymore it's jeeps and ATVs and helicopters.
And do they got to beat the bird to the thing before?
You got to be there, that's kind of important. Our style of falconry, based kind of on the English model, is that we train our birds to go what we call weight on, which is circle high above our head. And then the dog and the falconer produce game for it. And then the falcon comes down and gets the prey at a high speed. And then that happens right by you, which is good. If you direct if you have a flight that's, the chase, it happens far away by the time the bird catches the bird.
Before it actually.
And so that's a bad thing, because all kinds of bad things can happen when your bird is on a prey. Eagles are a big thing. Eagles are a big threat where I live.
Oh, really? Have you had eagles like come after your
yeah,
bird before?
you got to be, so if it happens right in front of you, which is what we strive for, you and the dog are there, and so everything is cool. But if that thing chases prey, a mile away and catches it, you got to get your butt over there, or something bad can happen. Coyotes or,
When you had just said to the dog and the bird, so they're partner. It's a partner hunt.
Absolutely. Well, like my style of hunting, where I live, our only quarry is waterfowl, ducks particularly. And so the ducks are accustomed to wild falcons, of course. That's their natural enemy. And then, so when a duck is in water, it knows it's safe from the falcons, right?
Okay.
So if we find a duck on a small piece of water, and then let the falcon go,
And it's just going to stay in the water.
yeah, it's pinned, basically. So the falcon is trained, it keys in on the pond right away. Falcon goes up, hopefully to 1,000 feet. That's kind of the gold standard.
Is it so that the prey don't see it, hopefully?
That's part of it. The higher they go, the less likely they are to be intimidated by it. But it's also for generating a good bit of inertia to whack the... So anyway, so then we basically, once the falcon is up over the pond, the dog and the falconer go in and chase the ducks out of the water, and the falcon comes down and pops it.
Oh, so it's more of just an impact. It's not even really like
Pretty
claws
much.
in.
At that level, if they're flying low, if they're like 100, 200 feet, they might just grab it. But if they get up, they're coming down. Like Dante, I've clocked him at 237 miles an hour from 3,000 feet.
That's awesome.
That happens pretty fast. You can't even see it when they're coming down that fast. All of a sudden, there's a dead duck there, and he's pitched up. But a lot of times, there's also everything can go wrong. Of course, that's the perfect situation, right? A lot of times the falcon will intimidate the duck to a point where it won't fly anymore, and the dog gets it, which is kind of low rent.
Is it like is there like a size thing to it? Like, will it only go, or will it go to ducks that are pretty equal to size?
You're always driving, mallards are our main target, and they're bigger. Like Dante, he's my main duck hawk, and he weighs half as much as a mallard.
Oh, he's what, 2 pounds, you were saying?
Yeah, he weighs, just about 2 pounds. He weighs 800 grams, which is a little less than 2 pounds.
Wow.
And a mallard weighs probably 3-4 pounds. I have another bird. I have a peregrine falcon that's a wild-caught bird that her main thing is snow geese.
Snow geese.
And they're like 5 pounds.
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
she's
say.
really locked in on it. It's pretty cool. She has learned to grab them behind the neck, and she doesn't get too beat up by them or
That's what I
anything
was
like
just gonna
that. And
ask,
so
yeah.
that's pretty extreme though. Her record was she caught a 10-pound goose, but that was kind of coincidence.
Wow.
Yeah, and so.
Did they ever go for turkey?
There is a school of falconry that does aspire to getting after turkeys, but that's mostly with like big hawks and eagles. I should say a little bit. I'm pretty falcon-centric, as you could tell from my... But there are a lot of falconers who are actually what we would more accurately call hawkers, that hunt with hawks. There's 2 basic kinds of birds of prey. Hawks are more sedentary, they're more ground oriented, and falcons are more aerial. And so being that a lot of places are more enclosed, it's more appropriate to have a hawk, like a goshawk or a red-tailed hawk, and they're pretty much used for hunting mammals, rabbits, and but they they're used for pheasants and things like that too as well. So
Did they ever use a Harris hawk?
Harris hawks are very popular, actually. They're really adaptable. They're really social. That you can do multiple birds.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
If Harris had to be multiple birds, because I know that's how they do in the wild. Right?
No, yeah, they don't. Some won't do it, but it became a thing for a while to hunt with a bunch of Harris hawks together, and that kind of
A good amount?
Yeah,
like 6
10 or something. So, but
cool.
And like you say, they do that in the wild. I've seen it in the wild. I've never seen falconers do it, but I've heard about it. And they're real cooperative and they're real social and they're real friendly. So the Harris hawks have been real popular. They're pretty much all the Harris hawks that are used in falconry are bred in captivity, although some people catch them in Arizona, but they're not native to this area and they don't do really well with the cold.
Well, and you said eagles, people do it with eagles?
Yeah, that's the extreme. There's a huge tradition in like the Mongolia and Kazakhstan of people who hunt with eagles, and their main quarry is foxes and wolves even. Yeah. Yeah, so
with a golden eagle.
Yeah, pretty much golden eagles. There's some other species in Asia and Europe that are really good, but and in this country, there are people who hunt with eagles. It's pretty highly regulated. You have to get a special permit to get an eagle, and then you're required to go get your eagle from some sheep farm in Wyoming where they're eating the lambs. So
do they catch the eagles too then? Or
yeah.
Oh
yeah, that's how they get them. Is they go and they take these depredating eagles and then they train them.
Well, and that was something that I was really curious about. Like, say I was a 16-year-old kid, like the kid we were talking to earlier. How does one get into it? Like, he's like, hey, I want to get into falconry. I don't have a dad that's in falconry. I don't have any family members that are in falconry.
Yeah, it's tough, and that's a limiting factor, which is not all bad because, as I said, it's a limited landscape that's available for falconers, and you got to kind of live a unique lifestyle. But anyway, to answer your question, you need a sponsor. Then this is a legal requirement by the state, and it's kind of in legislated into the regulatory structure where you have to be sponsored. You have to pass a test with a high grade. I think it's 85% or something like that. You got to pass a written test. You have to have your facilities inspected by the state, or the Falconry Club has a memorandum of understanding where we actually can do inspections of people who are prospective falconers.
So how would I find a sponsor?
There's a list online where
Look up online. Washington Falconry Association.
Actually, more like the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
And they maintain a list of people that are willing to be sponsors. I'd never have had an apprentice. My time is kind of limited, and my area is too. And the best thing that could happen is I could train a good falconer that would be competitive with me for my spots.
Yeah,
so
I feel.
I frown on it, but as you saw with Cole, it's pretty rewarding to have a young person growing up and learning and all that, like a sponge and stuff. So I've been around him. He's kind of been working with me on some wildlife research projects, and I'm not his actual sponsor, so I don't have that responsibility, but it's pretty fun to see him, taking it all in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I would get a sponsor. That sponsor would then say, because I know you can go buy a bird, right? You're an individual who sells birds. Say I wanted to go, I didn't want to buy a bird. Now, what's the next step?
Well, you're pretty much, I'm not really clear on the laws in this because they've changed recently, but traditionally, as an apprentice, the first thing is you have to have your sponsor sign off on you that you're ready. And usually a sponsor will require that you stick around him for a given period of time and learn the ropes before you actually get your own bird.
Oh, cool.
Yes. It's a big responsibility, and, you're taking on the well-being of this pretty awesome bird. So then once you're licensed and you're inspected and you've passed your test, you got your sponsor, then you're legally able to trap a red-tailed hawk or a kestrel.
A kestrel.
And kestrel is a small falcon. It's the smallest of the falcons. It's commonly referred to as a sparrowhawk.
A sparrowhawk?
You see them around here a lot. They're in Ellisburg like crazy. They're a little brightly red colored bird of prey, and they'll sit around on wires and poles. And they're pretty much used for hunting starlings and sparrows in falconry.
Oh, cool. I see a lot of red tails around here too.
And red tails is the main apprentice bird because they're available. They're really adaptable to hunting in small spaces and stuff. So generally somebody who's really into large birds of prey gets a red tail as a apprentice.
That's cool.
And then you have to serve your apprenticeship for at least 2 years. And once you've done that and your sponsor signs off on your 2-year level, then there's a much bigger list of birds that you're able to get. You're able to buy captive bred birds or go out and trap birds or take birds out of nests. And so
you can literally find them out of nests and go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the bulk of the birds used in falconry these days are bred in captivity for a lot of reasons. And you have a lot more control about their upbringing and stuff. But there are a lot of people who take wild birds. In this state, it's legal to take a peregrine falcon. Again, it's highly regulated, and you have to be a master falconer. So getting back to the legal structure. So once after you've served your apprentice, then you can be a general falconer, and that lasts for 5 years. If you satisfy, you don't get in trouble, and I still want to do it. After 5 years, you can become what's called a master falconer.
What's get in trouble?
I mean, violate the law, mostly paperwork.
Oh, okay. So
there's a lot of laws. I mean, it's very highly regulated. And so, as long as you don't go afoul of the law. And mostly, like I say, anymore, they've really liberalized the regulations. So.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is there a black market for falcons?
There was, and at one time, it was mostly run by the U.S. government, try to entrap people.
Shocker.
But anymore, there's really no incentive for illegal birds because we can really do whatever we want. Hunting seasons are a little bit limited. Like for me, I'm limited to the same 107 days that a shotgunner has. Okay. So and that's a product of the Migratory Bird Treaty that says that these waterfowl, migratory birds, are only to be subjected to hunting pressure for 107 days of the year.
So during that hunting, then you probably stay away from the hunters with guns, just because.
Try to, yeah. It's pretty unusual to have a conflict, because you're basically usually hunting different areas and different ducks. I mean, a typical duck hunter will set up in a pond and with a blind and wait for ducks to come, whereas a falconer is driving around looking for them to find them out in open spaces and stuff. But, yeah,
that's cool. So that's something that I thought was so cool. Just learning that you can go and catch a wild falcon with all the right paperwork and everything. Like, how is it that they even do that though? Like, how do you even establish that relationship or even start that relationship?
Yeah, it's one of the difficult parts of it, and it's very satisfying and rewarding once it happens, if it works. Like, for instance, Pearl, this white bird, she was raised by her parents in a chamber, right? So for her first 70-odd days of her life, she never saw people. So when I took her out of the room to start training her, she was a wild bird.
Okay.
She was no different than just something that you would trap out on the river or something,
Mm-hmm.
And
is her hunting skills comparable to a wild?
Yeah, and then that's a good point, because there's basically two kinds of mentalities of falconry birds, and that is what we call imprints, which are birds that are taken, like 10 days to 2 weeks old, and they imprint on people, and so they love you. They think they're a person, or they think you're a bird or whatever. And they are real tame, real friendly, and they're difficult to get to hunt. They have no innate hunting skills.
They expect you're going to feed them.
Right. And they always have been fed. And they're, and it's a product of them having a mentality of a young bird and expecting to be fed. And a lot of times they don't lose that. And so it's a challenge. It's almost more difficult to raise up an imprint to hunt than it is a parent-raised bird, because you're dealing with all these mixed signals, and they can get pretty screwed up if you can't let them get hungry. They're important. It's very important to keep them well fed. So then you lose an important training tool, because like with the chamber-raised birds or the parent-raised birds, they are your only control is food, feeding them, right? So, and that's the reward and everything. It's all operant conditioning, and it's all based on you rewarding them when they do the right thing with food. So you don't have that tool when you have an imprint bird. You have to do trickery and stuff to to make them think they're a bird and not a person. So
When they imprint, do they imprint on one person specifically or just people?
generally, yeah, usually it's a one-on-one type thing, but they can transfer off, and sometimes they imprint on the wrong person. You know, I had a friend who had a young boy at the same time he was imprinting his falcon, and the falcon imprinted on the boy, which wasn't exactly a bad thing because he lost a lot of the bad behavior that is associated with an imprint falcon, because he just exhibited to the child. So there's a lot of nuances to it, but you know, generally I like parent raised birds or chamber raised birds or wild caught birds.
So in the chamber, you're not even, you have like some system to feed them so they don't see you
Right.
or anything.
Yeah, basically you're putting food in there every day for them, and the parents are feeding them and raising them up. So like I have one pair of gerfalcons, and they generally raise 4 young a year. And
That's awesome. And you do a lot of breeding? Like, do you?
that's it. You know, that's that one pair. And
And do they have? So you said 4 young a year. Is that like a clutch of 4 or? Oh, okay.
yeah, they had 5 this year, which is pretty unusual. That was the record for me. And in the wild, it's pretty unusual for them to have 5. But different birds, you know, smaller birds generally have larger clutches, and bigger birds have smaller clutches.
Oh, that's cool. Is this all the birds you have? How many birds do you have?
I think I have 5 birds right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
And is that like a number because I know you sell birds too. Is that kind of like where you keep it?
Yeah, actually, I would like to have fewer birds right now, but I'm getting kind of old and tired, you know. So
I can only imagine the responsibility of these things.
So I have the pair, and then I have 3 hunting birds, and then I have an imprint that was the first bird that my pair produced, and I'm kind of attached to her, and I'm hoping she'll breed. But she's like 6-7 years old now, and she hasn't even laid an egg yet, so it's not a winning economic situation.
When you imagine, and when you're breeding them, do you have to like when I'm breeding my rabbits, I have to really pay attention. You know, I can't just leave them. Is it the same kind of thing, or do you just let them do their
There are critical
thing?
times. I mean, you know, you got to be there at the right time to do the right thing for sure, particularly when they just around hatching. The routine with hatching the jurors out is when they're like 1 day old, I go in and take a blood sample from the chicks, and then that's submitted to a lab, and they do DNA testing, and then I can tell their gender.
That's how you tell their gender?
Yeah, the girls from the boys, because when they're that small, you can't really tell. So then hopefully you get that back within about a week. And so when they're 12 days old, 11, 12 days old, they have to get a seamless band. I don't know if you can see on Pearl, see that gold band there above the...
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's basically a ring that goes around their feet when they're young, when they're small. And it's sized so that once it goes on, it doesn't come off. You got to put it on the right day.
Oh, wow.
And so once they have that closed band, that seamless band on their leg, then they're a bona fide, legitimate commercial product.
So
It's like a VIN number on a car or
Mhm.
something, right? Once they have that closed band, they're easily identifiable as a captive bred bird.
Okay, cool.
And then they can be sold. Wild caught birds can't be sold, or a bird that gets missed. If you spaced out and didn't put the band on the right day,
okay.
then the bird,
then you can't.
then the bird gets not a removable, but like a cable tie type of band,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes on once their feet are big, and those birds can't be sold either.
Can't be sold either. Wow. And that's great. I'm glad to know that you can't sell wild caught.
Right? Yeah. No, that it keeps it a little bit more pure. In this state, you can't even sell progeny of wild. In other words, I've got a wild caught peregrine falcon. If she laid eggs, I could not sell them.
That I like that myself personally.
Yeah, me too. Actually, you know, when I was when we got peregrines delisted and we managed to get a legal harvest of them, I was a proponent of not commercializing it and it's more pure.
Yeah, definitely. What's your favorite bird? Like, what's your easiest bird to keep, you think?
I'd say that's 2 different questions.
Yeah, definitely is. What is your favorite?
Gerfalcons are obviously my favorite bird. That's kind of what my whole falconry experience is revolved around. Ger peregrines, like Dante, he is a product of a cross between a female peregrine and a male gerfalcon.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason, they get the best traits of both parents. A lot of hybrids have been tried. This is the only, well, not the only one that works, but it's the mainstay, and I'd say it's the most popular long-wing, a falcon that is used for falconry. They have both the parents' best traits, and they lose a lot of the undesirable ones.
That's awesome. Do they eat a lot?
They eat, like a gerfalcon eats a quail a day.
A quail a day.
Uh-huh.
So you have to raise the quail yourself?
Oh, we actually buy them from game farms, frozen and in large quantities.
I've always wondered that because I have rabbits and quail, and I've always been wondering, how could I make money off of these things? And I never thought about it. Falcons,
yeah.
falcons.
And I buy them in huge quantities to get a price break, and it's gotten to be where selling the progeny of my pair basically just pays for my habit.
I feel it. That's cool.
It used to be I made money at it. It's been a while for that.
Really? Did you ever like run a business with them, like doing the orcharding?
No, I've tried to avoid that. It's real popular with what you're talking about is what we call abatement, where they use various birds of prey to scare birds out of orchards and berry fields, mostly vineyards, sometimes garbage dumps, but it kind of degrades the sport. It's kind of, like my goal is to have a bird that flies really high and catches something. Mm-hmm. Whereas the abatement thing is you want a bird that flies low and doesn't catch anything.
Just flies, right?
Because if it catches something, you're done for the day with it,
Oh, really?
Once they get full of food, you're pretty much...
Oh, but I guess, right? Because you're not going to be there every time to just take it away from them.
And that kind of... it isn't psychologically effective with the bird. If you're sitting there taking its food away every time it catches something, they're going to say, screw this. And they're just going to go off, or they won't catch anything. Anyway, so that's what abatement is about, is taking the bird out there and fluttering it around the orchard until it chases all the starlings away.
Yeah, that was my first experience with falconry, because I grew up in Brewster, Washington.
I know Brewster.
Yeah, so, all the orchards around there. And I remember seeing there was a guy that was just hanging out at the park, and he had like 7 or 8 falcons. And I'm like, what's going on? And that's when he told me, that the orchards hire me to get rid of stuff. I thought that was one of the coolest things. Because that could be a viable business.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of falconers are making, and it's good money. They were actually able to work for a few months out of the year in the summer and then go off and be a falconer and just have fun all winter. But, it gets old too. I don't really... I mean, I love falconry and everything, but at the end of the 107-day hunting season, I'm ready to do something else. But I love that these abatement guys, they work all summer flying their birds. And that's another part of it that's kind of a little bit antithetical to me, is that we generally don't fly our birds in the summer. They're molting. Okay. The hunting season is off, So my birds, they stay in a big room. They each have their own big room where they stay all summer, and they're molting.
So in the wild, they don't eat as much really in the summer?
Well, they're raising babies and stuff, so yeah, they do. And so, part of our regimen is keeping the birds hungry till they'll hunt. And so if they're molting, you don't want them hungry, because you want to produce good feathers and stuff. And so, so generally we don't fly the birds in the summer months, but in abatement you have to. That's when the crops are out and everybody's, so... It's kind of a perversion of the whole falconry deal in my mind.
Okay, do you think it really is a perversion where there's more people that are in it for
obviously
money,
they've done it. They've refined the techniques, and they're most generally, I'd say almost exclusively, responsible falconers who are doing it, because that's the only way it works. And it's legitimate.
And do you see that there's more people that I would assume come into falconry because they love it, they think that they're interested in it? Or is there people that are coming in just for the business part?
Yeah, no, I'd say it's the first.
Yeah.
I'd say there's very few people that just want to go in. I mean, it's a pretty rigorous process to become a falconer, as we've talked about. And so, it's not like something, go out and get a job at the Jack in the Box or anything, it's more like, oh, I'm a falconer now, I better find out something to do with other. Because, you know, like it's pretty hard to keep a regular job and be a good falconer because you got to fly your bird really every day. That's the only way it works. And so, you know, all of a sudden in the winter, the days are like 4 hours long around here, you know. And so if you've got a job, you know, you either have to fly on your lunch hour or maybe just try to fly on weekends or, you know. So,
You fly them every day then. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whoa, so with 5 birds, you're like you said, you're busy.
Yeah.
That's wild. How long does each bird fly for every night?
You know, I was keeping track just during the training and conditioning, you know, obviously every fall you have to get the bird back in shape and, you know, develop. So I get, you know, I'm flying 2 birds. I can usually get it all done in 2 hours.
With just 2 birds?
Uh-huh. And so, but, you know, if you're hunting, like with me and hunting, a lot of it's driving around looking for the right opportunity. So it's not unusual for me to drive 50 miles, you know, just around in circles to try to find a duck in a pond. And so that could be all day. Yeah. Oh, but you might find a duck in the first 10 minutes and be done, you know. A good duck flight is like 20 minutes. Okay. So, yeah, anything can happen.
What does a day raising birds kind of look like? They have a time that they like to be fed every day?
Like to have the same routine going. You know, my style is to go in the morning, get it over with, especially particularly when you're hunting, because that's usually the most productive time to find game is, you know, in the early part of the day. And then you get it over with and you can go about your life. But, you know, all things happen too. Then like when you're just training birds or conditioning them, a lot of times you just wait till the last thing before. They tend to fly really good right before dark. There's a biological clock that's going off that said we better get something before we go to bed. Okay. And so that, you know, particularly with a bird that's having problems or is recalcitrant in actually hunting, sometimes it's important to do it right before dark. Okay. But, you know, and then there's a certain utility in having a bird that can fly anytime, you know, so whatever, like this weekend when I was doing this meat thing, I could, you know, it's managing their food too. You want them pretty much empty of food. So if you fly them in the morning one day, you can fly them in the afternoon the next day. But if you fly them in the afternoon one day, you really don't want to fly them in the morning the next day because they're not completely empty of food and sharp. And again, it's very different with every bird. Some are more adaptable than others. And some people, you know, particularly with hawks, they can fly them all day. You know, they can catch, you know, 10 rabbits or something. But with falcons, pretty much one a day is it, you know, and I pretty much, you know, stick to that because I found that rewarding them after a successful flight keeps the thing going. Whereas if you try flying them, like Dante, if I try flying him 3 times in a day, about the 3rd time, he's going to say, screw this, I'm going to go looking for a girl or something, you know.
So then you wake up in the morning, you got to get them flying before you can feed them. And they're ready to go. They're
pretty
like,
much,
they're
yeah.
all,
yeah.
Okay, cool. And then they're just, after the 2-hour flight, they're pretty good.
Yeah. And then they get perched out on a bluff and where they can't get entangled up. You know, it's important that they keep their feathers. We really stress having a perfectly feathered bird. You know, if you have bad management habits, they get broken feathers and stuff. So it's all pretty intense in terms of managing the birds.
They're perched for 18 hours a day.
Yeah, and, you know, that's not any different than the wild birds. If you look around, you know, I did a lot of raptor research where I was studying birds, particularly early in my career, and a lot of it was spent sitting and watching a bird sit. You know, and a wild bird probably hunts maybe 20, 30 minutes a day, a falcon, and then the rest of the time it's just sitting around waiting, digesting food. Or, you know, and it's more intense during the breeding season, obviously, when they're out there providing for their family. But
how can you tell when a female's ready to breed? Does she brood kind of like a chicken?
Yeah, well, they're ready to breed when they lay some eggs.
Oh, so it's just they laid eggs and you see it. They're not like attitude changes.
Well, you know, and with a pair, with a natural pair like what I have, you can tell when they're making the right noises and going through the courtship rituals and stuff in the chamber. You know, a lot of projects have cameras on the birds, and so they can watch their behavior and tell. But with me, I pretty much just leave them alone, and then one day there's a bunch of eggs out there, and it's pretty fun.
So is your pair always together?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. is that common or is that?
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it works.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And like I say, with imprints, breeding an imprint is much different because it's much more interactive, where you have to court the bird, you have to inseminate it artificially, and then you have to deal with the chicks because you're half of the equation. And so, yeah, it's much more, you have to spend a lot more time with the imprints, breeding the imprints. And that's kind of how the hybrids are made, is by artificial insemination. And it's pretty rare to have two separate species breed together naturally.
It happens in the wild.
It does happen, but it's very rare. Yeah.
Is there one that is easier to train than the other? Like one that's just will listen on command, like types of birds? Like you said, hawks are
getting
different.
back to what we were talking about before, in the hawk world, I'd say the Harris hawk is the most adaptable.
Oh, really?
And the easiest to train. And for that reason, it's kind of got a kind of a mixed reputation, because it kind of can lead to bad habits with the falconer, because you don't have to pay so much attention to detail.
I feel that.
So if and as I said, the imprints have a whole different set of problems and challenges in raising them as the parent-raised birds. And then in the falcon world, again, I think the Gyr peregrine has proven itself to be the most adaptable and easiest to train. I mean, they're not easy to train, but if you do the right thing, it does work. And there's some that are more difficult. Prairie falcons are pretty common, especially around here. They're a wild falcon, similar size to a peregrine. They're notoriously hard to train, because they have kind of a nasty disposition. But they're really good hunters, and so if you get through that phase, they can be real effective.
Is it a call? Like, is it a name that you call them? A whistle or?
Well, yeah, we do different things. My birds are trained to come to a lure. Yeah, and then we talked about the drone a little bit. We use a drone to train the birds to get high. That whole standard of trying to get the birds up to 1,000 feet.
Yeah, I saw you did a video with the balloon.
We used to use balloons and kites before drones were invented, and it was pretty complicated. There was a lot of falderall of keeping helium in the balloons and having winding the string up and everything. The drone, you just tell it where to go. It goes there and you tickle the switch and it comes home by itself. So drones have been pretty revolutionary in training long wings and getting them back into condition. Basically you can train the bird to do the right thing every time. Just exactly what you want. What you want is you want the bird to be up really high, a little bit upwind of you and the dog. So when you flush game, it can stoop downwind and get the quarry. So with a drone, you just train it to go upwind. And if you're consistent, it's not panacea. You got to do the right thing and you got to do it a lot. But it's made training these falcons. And, in times of scarce game, you can, if you don't have wild game to hunt, you can exercise the bird and get it in awesome shape just by sending it up to the drone 1,000 feet. They get tired out. And and it's kind of fun too. I like flying the drones.
Is that like the biggest technological advancement in falconry?
It's one of them. I mean, in terms of our modern falconry, we've had a major revolution just in the last 10 years in telemetry. But we use we have GPS transmitters now where they have a little 10-gram transmitter that goes on their back that picks up a GPS signal from the heavens, and then it translates that into a digital data stream that's broadcast to a little computer in your pocket that's Bluetooth to your phone. So when you're hunting and you don't know where your bird is, you can just whip out your phone. Okay, he's right. And again, it's revolutionary, because a lot of the nuances of hunting are when to stay and when to go. Is my bird flying over the horizon and I got to chase him, or is he waiting on in the perfect position where when I get a bird up to over 1,000 feet, that's pretty hard to see,
and I
especially for an old guy like me.
That was one of my questions, was like, do they ever just take off and you're like, what do I do? Where do I go?
With the GPS, you look at your phone and say, he's right there, he's ready, go in, chase the game, or I better get back to the car and go looking for him because he's
So before GPS, it was just, we're looking.
And we had, analog, traditional research type transmitters on them.
Oh,
Or you
okay,
get, you get the beep, 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 and you've seen the wildlife shows where the guy has the receiver and he's tracking. That was pretty much developed for falconry, and then it's been adapted to wildlife biology. But anyway, so they still have, if you look on these birds, you can see they have a little transmitter on their tail. You see that wire that's coming off there? That's a UHF signal that just beeps and beeps. So the GPS will tell you right where they are, but that's a backup. Those VHF or UHF transmitters are in case the GPS transmitters use a lot of power, and so they're good for like about 24 hours, and then you're back to the beep beep beep. You get you get spoiled. I mean, with the GPS is a crutch. I mean, it's really nice because you know what's going on. Plus, the computer records everything. It records how high they flew, how fast they flew.
So you have all that data too.
And then it's just stored in your phone. So, you can look and you can say, well, I flew him to 700 feet today. I can climb at 800 feet tomorrow. He climbed at so many feet per second today, and he's doing well. Or, we went for 13 minutes yesterday. Maybe we ought to go for 15 minutes today. So, yeah, the GPS has been really, really sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever had a bird that just didn't come back?
Yeah. Not for a long time.
Really? Like, so, and what was that like? Is it just like you were looking for them, or you see them, and every time you got close, they just keep?
Well, yeah, all variations.
Really?
But yeah, usually if you do the right thing, when you get close to them, you can get them back. Pearl here, the first time I turned her loose this year, she was actually kind of a wonderkin, and she did everything right, during training. So when you're training them, initially you keep them on what we call a creance, which is a long line. So they learn to come back to you, come to the lure, come to the drone and everything while they're tied up. Yeah. So you can't go wrong. And so you do that over and over again until they get the idea, and then you turn them loose. Well, she did everything right until the day came when I turned her loose, and she's got the wind under her wings and said, "This is fun." And she went kiting around the county for 24 hours.
She hustled you. She's like, I'll do it.
So yeah. This is fun. And, they actually, gerfalcons especially, can learn to love that kind of stuff. And that's not what you want. You want the bird waiting on right over you. So she had a little bit of a retraining period after that. After I got her back after 24 hours, and the GPS was dead, and I was freaking out. So then I was a little bit more rigorous in her weight control. And see, we weigh the birds every day to know exactly where they are condition-wise, and that's pretty important for
keep track of.
Yeah, to be able to maintain control of them. You don't want to flip the fat bird. There's an old saying from the English days that goes something like, a fat hawk leads to an empty game bag and a lean horse. In other words, if your hawk is too fat, you're going to be chasing it all over the countryside, right?
Wow.
So the standard is to keep them pretty sharp. And
are they kind of like, do they kind of have like their own little homing, not device, but like, have you ever been out hunting and then all of a sudden you didn't know where your bird was and then it showed up at your house?
Oh, absolutely. And more often than not, they go back to where you started.
Okay.
And, there's a million cases of chasing a bird all over and then eventually going back to where you started and getting the bird back. And again, the GPS is really good for that because, you can just look and say, that's where the bird is, So, yeah, I had a couple birds that have homed to the house, and it's cool, but it can be an issue, too, because you're out hunting and the bird decides he wants to go home. Mm-hmm. That's kind of counterproductive.
Yeah.
So,
do you ever have any, or is there a species of bird that's just very, very aggressive? Like you could take them out and they will just keep killing pigeon after pigeon after pigeon.
Yeah. Goshawks are like that. A friend of mine used to like to tell me a story. I don't know if I believed it or not, but he talked about catching 44 rabbits in 1 hour.
Yeah, I don't know. That's
So he told a lot of tall tales, but somehow I kind of believed him on that. So yeah, goshawks are real aggressive, and they're really effective. They're really point A to point B type hunters, and they're the people that have hawks and are real serious about it generally gravitate towards goshawks. Yeah.
You know anybody that's have you ever seen hunting of a golden eagle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're again, it's pretty specialized. You need a lot of open space. Around here, they're pretty much used for hunting jackrabbits. because that's a species that's adaptable to that kind of thing. And in Washington, the jackrabbit is an endangered species, so if you have an eagle, you can't hunt jackrabbits, which is the preferred prey. You'd have to go to Oregon or California to do it.
So, like, these guys couldn't do jackrabbit?
Not in this state.
Legally, like,
They
technically they could.
Yeah, actually, it's not.
A size thing. Or...
Well, yeah, no, and again, it's kind of a style issue where people with falcons don't really want to go to mammals.
Oh, why is that?
I don't know.
It's just a thing?
It's a thing, yeah. The gerfalcons, they have a close relative in Asia, what's called a saker falcon. And they were traditionally used for hunting hares and stuff, and so, yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know why, like, I thought that was the primary thing that you guys hunt were rabbits.
Yeah, and it is actually, because by and large, most falconers are really hawkers, and they are in a situation where they're hunting rabbits with a hawk.
That's cool.
And that's kind of what happened this weekend at this meet. All the serious hunting that was going on was out there in the sagebrush hunting rabbits with hawks.
Does anybody, I don't know if this is a thing or not, does anybody ever fish? Can you fish with a bird?
You know, a lot of people have talked about it, and I've actually heard of stories of people that had, ospreys, or the bird that is actually a prolific fisher. But it would be complicated.
So you've never seen it, and you never heard of anybody doing it?
I've heard that some people have actually pulled it off, but I don't know. I don't know personally of it.
You think it would be more of like the bird did it, not really they trained it to do it?
Right, and that's kind of the origin of falconry too. That kind of, there's some theories around how it started, and and what it basically amounts to is there was a person out there, they saw a bird catch something, and they went and took it away from them. Because when a bird catches something, like particularly like Dante catches a duck, he can't fly with that duck.
No, especially in the water. That's the whole reason.
Yeah, right? It's twice as big as him, so it would be basically ripping off these birds of prey. And they got the idea, well, what if I had a bird of prey and I could do that, every day? And so so that could be. That's one of the theories about the origin of it.
Well, I never even had thought about that, man. Shit goes down, I'm gonna start following birds.
And I've actually had. There's some cases in my life where I've had wild birds that would hunt with me. There was a particular gerfalcon that was in my area, and she would watch a wild gerfalcon.
And she would just show up when you were hunting?
She'd watch me flying my birds, and after a while she caught on that this was a good thing because I was producing game for the birds. And so
getting fed?
I could go out and she would wait on, it started by, I'd have pigeons, when I was training birds, I'd use pigeons for kind of artificial prey. So I'd have a pigeon left at the end of the day, and there would be, we called her silver bells because she showed up at Christmas every year. And she would wait on, and I'd throw her the pigeon,
She just loved it.
Yeah, she'd go after it. So then that didn't take too long before I'd go out there, she'd be waiting on, and we'd hunt the ducks, and I never touched her.
Never?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
But that's pretty unusual. That was, and there's been a couple other birds that have been in my life that have done that. And there's a few people that do that with hawks, that like a goshawk. A couple people I know have had goshawks that just hung around their house, mostly because of the pigeon flocks. And then they got out and started hunting and started flushing game for this wild hawk. And then, so that's a pretty good theory about the origin of falconry.
So it's like pigeons, something that a lot of people raise.
Cause they're really attractive to most birds of prey, and they're easy to maintain. And like an emergency, if your bird's too fat and you need to get it back, you can always get a pigeon. And that's kind of how they're trapped too. If you're trapping a wild bird, you usually use pigeons as a bait.
Really?
Yeah.
Like an injured pigeon?
Or a tethered pigeon.
Tethered pigeon. And they'll just go for it. That's cool. Like I know hawks, all of these birds are way smarter than I thought they were. I'd got blue jam chickens this year. They have personalities. They're like so interesting. And I also noticed that the birds from around the whole community really like here, because I'll throw scratch and stuff. And I've developed relationships with like crows. Do people ever use those corvids for?
Well, there's a lot of people who have had corvids, crows, magpies, ravens, and they're really smart. They're a lot smarter than birds of prey, actually. And there's all kinds of incredible stories about the things that crows and ravens and magpies have done in captivity. And
So could you take the same techniques that you use to like catch a falcon to catch a crow?
oh,
or-
absolutely, yeah.
Oh man, that is so cool.
Yeah, and again, there's legal issues.
Yeah, I could imagine. I could imagine. I just seeing somebody with a raven would just sound so awesome too, though. Because you could teach them. Since you said they're smart, you think you could probably teach them more even to hunt and like
I guess.
all kind of crazy stuff. Because I was even thinking like parrots. Could you teach a parrot?
You know, I know a friend of mine has actually has parrots that are loose around his place, and he pretty much trains them like birds of prey, and they do the same kind of stuff.
So he
Yeah.
can hunt
Yeah.
with his parrots.
Well,
if
he
wanted
doesn't
to.
really hunt with them, but they fly around loose and do whatever they want, and it's pretty darn cool.
So, but essentially, he could have a parrot hunting too. So cool. I had hawks, crows, parrots, the bald eagle. You've probably never seen anybody with a bald eagle.
I have seen a person that flew a bald eagle, and again,
Pretty cool.
You know, in this country, that's pretty tough. They're protected heavily, legally, and they're not really well adapted to falconry, although it has worked for people to, you know, they're kind of cranky.
I could only imagine. What is that? It's like you said not in this country, so was it like
In Canada.
Canada?
Uh-huh.
Canada? Cool. That's cool. That's awesome. Let's see. I have a couple more questions.
You want to go
You
through a
violate
routine
food.
with feeding the birds?
Yes. Yeah, we
Okay.
can do that.
So basically, they get fed on the fist every day, and part of the routine, as I told Brandon a minute ago, is weighing the bird to see how much, what kind of condition they're in, and keeping track of it. So this is Pearl, young gyrfalcon. She's looking like she's weighing around 1,500 grams. And part of the training regimen is to keep them accustomed to eating on your fist, so that's pretty much where they get to eat. This is the hindquarters of a quail, Coturnix quail. She's pretty hungry, because she...
Is the pearl beak like that unique to her, or that species has that color of beak?
Generally, it's a gyrfalcon thing that in their juvenile plumage, their soft parts, what we call their soft parts, their feet and their beak and cere are blue. And you can see that kind of bluish gray color.
Yeah.
So as they grow older, that'll go to yellow. And they'll be bright yellow, and you can see that on Dante. You'll see in a minute that he's a mature bird and he's gone. Also, she's in her juvenile plumage. She's what we would consider a white gyr. Gyrfalcons come in all colors, from pure white to pure black. And she is, because she's in her juvenile plumage, she's not pure white, but she is really pretty light. And when she molts in the first year, she'll turn almost pure white. It'll be kind of gray, silver gray on her back.
Are the females larger than the males?
They are, yeah. She's about as big as a falcon gets in this country. Males are sometimes thought to be better for falconry because they're the providers. You know, they're the ones that are bringing home the bacon, so to speak.
You'd think it'd be reversed with the females being larger, that they would be the hunters.
Yeah, well, and there's that school of thought too. You know, they catch bigger prey for sure. She would have a lot less problem with, say, a mallard or a goose than a male, but that's kind of part of the training regimen too. So here you can see that's that closed band that I was talking about, her VIN number. This rig here, these are jesses, these little loops that keep them tied up, an extender and a swivel. That's all to keep them from getting tangled up. So that all comes off when they fly. The only thing they have on them when you fly is the bracelets. Because if you leave all that other stuff on, it looks like they have food, and an eagle sees that, and they're going to chase them until they exhaust them. You know, the eagle has ultimate staying power, and yeah, so that's another reason we use this. This is the transmitter on the tail, and that keeps. It used to be we'd put transmitters on the legs of the birds, but we found that also attracted eagles. Also, these two birds, I should have put the GPS transmitter, they have a backpack on and a little clip So when I get ready to fly, I put the GPS transmitter on their back.
Oh, wow.
And it comes off every day. It's got to get recharged every day. So
Oh, but that stays on their back?
yeah, and the one on the tail, it only needs batteries like once every 20 days. And there's a little magnet that turns it on and off. So you can just leave the transmitter on the bird and turn it on when you fly and turn it off when you're done. He should be around 800 grams. Come on, bud. Come on, no, relax. Don't get involved with her. That'd be a bad idea. Yeah, we'll call that 814.
Did they get chased out of their airspace very often? One time I was like walking my dog, I saw a hawk or some sort of falcon getting chased by like 4 little birds.
Yeah, and mostly the problem we have around here is prairie falcons. Prairie falcons are real territorial, and you get hunting. Oh, come on, don't be bad. Prairie falcons, if you're flying in their territory, they get real territorial. You want to chase them off, and it kind of oftentimes ruins the hunting situation. But he's actually really good about that because he's a real high flyer, and if a prairie falcon comes in, he just goes up.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a bad thing. You know, so he'll just he's because he's been trained on the drone and he's always in really top shape. He can outfly a wild prairie falcon like crazy. You just leave him in the dirt.
Not even worried.
Yeah.
Smart guy, picking all the feathers off first.
Yeah, making a mess.
Oh, do you ever feed them snakes?
No, but do wild birds eat snakes quite a bit? No, I pretty much feed birds only. I don't even feed mammals. A lot of people feed rats and mice, but I stay away from that.
Is there a reason? Is it more nutritious?
Just you know, they get used to something and they like it. And, you know, they love quail. They like quail a lot better than they do duck or anything like that. So it's no problem for me to, when they catch a duck, I just go up to them and offer them quail, and they say, "Yeah, I'll go with that. Screw this duck." So
They just throw it back. That's crazy.
Does falconry work well with owls?
not real well. It's certainly been done, and it's legal in this state. You can have a great horned owl or a barred owl.
A barn owl?
Barred.
Oh, barn.
Yeah, and there are captive bred owls available too, but
There's always barn owls around here.
yeah, they're hard to train. They're kind of on the weird end of the psychological spectrum.
Right.
They're not something that a lot of people have success with.
They're dumb or they're stubborn?
Yeah, both.
Yeah.